Hey guys, back, and part three is going to focus on containment, the Truman Doctrine, and the Marshall Plan. So we'll be talking about what steps the United States is going to begin to take to sort of stand up to the Soviet threat. Okay, so let's talk about that. In the last section, we talked about Churchill's Iron Curtain speech and how it sort of gives us the visual imagery necessary, to kind of get people to support standing up to the growth of the Soviet threat in Europe. And so the question remains, how are we going to do that? What's the plan? And so, if there's one word to describe U.S. foreign policy during this time, it's containment. Okay, containment is it. Now, what does it mean? It essentially boils down to blocking Soviet influence anywhere and everywhere, okay, in order to stop the spread of communism, okay? We need to contain it. Yeah, makes sense? Now, this foreign policy idea is, and really the phrase containment is going to be coined by his U.S. representative, George Kennan. Now, he is going to be representative to the Soviet Union for a long time. And so, this guy, he's dealt with the Soviets. He knows what they're like. He, in essence, is going to write this long telegram where he's trying to argue that essentially communism is on a collision course with the United States, with capitalism. And so that's something that we've known, and we've been sort of tracking throughout the semester, especially when we go back to like the unions and what was going on with them and why they were such a problem for the United States. And remember that we've already been with the first Red Scare. And so the idea that George Kennan is trying to promote here is that, he knows how the Soviets are, he knows why they are a threat, and he's essentially trying to list the things that we can do as a nation, as a government, as a world power to stop that threat from growing. So in this long telegram, he talks about several things. He argues that the Soviets are looking to expand their territory, and they're going to continue to do that unless we stop them, unless somebody stops them. Number two, they want to undermine Western colonial development. And so not only are they challenging the United States everywhere for supremacy, but they contradict what the United States mean. And so they hope to make the United States seem like the villain, or seem like like the people don't benefit from that style of government, or from the way that society has developed. And so, like I said, they hope to undermine what the United States does. In addition to that, Kennan argues that they want to develop their own bloc, right, and completely close it off from the world, and that's where that Iron Curtain comes in, right? So they want to have these communist-friendly countries and just completely isolate them in an effort to kind of protect their own interests, but also to keep Western influence out, okay? And so the final sort of main point of this long telegram is that the Soviets are in it to infiltrate Western society. Okay, so he's already talking about the possibility that they might be trying to spy or, undermine, challenge the United States everywhere and anywhere that they might be. So what do we do about that? Okay, because what Kennan is trying to say is that in order for containment to work, in order to defeat this growing communist threat, we got to stand up to them anywhere and everywhere. We cannot back down, because if we back down, they win. Okay, it's all about standing up to them in Europe, in the Pacific, wherever this threat might appear. We got to do it, and we got to do it consistently. And we might not even have to shoot at them, but in order to contain communism, we have to stand up to that threat, okay? And that kind of goes into the idea of that domino theory, right? Because if we don't stand up to a growing communist threat, or The idea is that one country might turn to communism, and then those around it might turn to communism, and then those around it might turn to communism. And so the idea is that each country will fall to communism, and therefore, more countries will continue to fall, almost like the domino effect, right? Where you just line them up and they all fall. And so we got to do something. We got to stand up to them. And so during the early years of the Cold War, President Truman is trying to seek help for Greek and Turkish countries who, of course, they were our allies during, or Greece was anyways an ally to the United States during the war. But what is happening here is that these are, Republican, democratic, Western-looking countries, if you will, and they are in danger of falling to a communist force. So the Greeks, the Turks, they are going through a civil war in their country after World War II, and the United States wants to jump in, help them out economically, supply them with whatever they want to fend off any possible communist forces that might be trying to take over. And so in 1947, President Truman is going to step in because Great Britain basically says that they are not going to be providing any more help to the Greek and Turkey. And so this is where Truman steps in. Now, the Truman Doctrine is basically going to ask Congress for help, for money. The idea here is that if you have these funds to help them fight this battle, then they are going to be friendly to the United States, but then also will be able to keep communism away from this region. And so he's going to ask Congress for $400 billion in money to follow this policy of containment. So he's promising to give this aid to any country that wants it, any country that needs it to fight off communism as an effort to stabilize their economy, stabilize the region. Because essentially what Truman is trying to say is that any threat to democracy, a threat to their democracy equals a threat to ours. So it kind of, sounds a lot like what Woodrow Wilson said way back in 1916. About the reasons why we had to get involved in World War I, right? Is that the world must be made safe for democracy. So we see kind of, remnants of that, or kind of trickling into this foreign policy as well. So because of this, the money is, the idea is that the help is there. He wants to be able to help these countries that need it. And so the following year, the Marshall Plan is announced. Now, the Marshall Plan is named, of course, after General George C. Marshall. He is now Secretary of State at this time, and he's announcing this idea that, this is economic aid. We are trying to help our friendly countries in Europe in order to help, either jumpstart their economy or to prevent them from falling into a depression that could potentially lead to the rise of communism. So if these countries are struggling, they can request this aid. And, the United States is going to sort of follow in line with what the Truman Plan is proposing. But then the Marshall Plan is the actual financial aid that is going to be spread throughout Europe. So if you look at this map, you can see which countries receive the most aid. Greece and country are going to be the ones that get, a pretty small amount. But look at the United Kingdom, right? Look at France. They are going to get probably the biggest chunk of all of this. Our number one policy aim at this is to avoid the depression. We want to keep it away. We don't want it to come back. And the way that we're going to do that is by providing any kind of financial help that these countries need, be it in food, machinery, materials, anything that they need to rebuild. The idea is that the economics in it have a lot to do with why we are assisting these countries. We don't want them to fall to the depression. We don't want them to fall to communism. So we are going to pour $13 billion of aid to these countries in Europe as a way to keep the depression away. And not only that, keep communism away. Remember, this is what containment is all about. We have a plan. We have the long telegram, which is telling us all the reasons why we have to take the Soviet Union as a threat. They want to undermine the United States. They want to infiltrate, and they are contrary to capitalism. They are opposites of democratic governments, and so they are a threat. They must be stopped according to what containment the policy says. And so in 1947, Truman is going to request the money from the government, and then later that year the Marshall Plan is going to put it into action. So food, machinery, whatever these countries need, if they needed to turn their economies around, the U.S. is there to help because it's in our interest, right? What does the Truman Doctrine say? A threat to democracy, to their democracy, is essentially a threat to ours, okay? So moving forward, we have the plan in place, we have the strategies, we have the money, we think this is going to work, and so what we realize is that we are gonna have to change our structure, our government structure. And so for part 4, what we're going to focus on next is, the National Security Act, the CIA, all of that expansion of government, and then we're going to start to see how those battle lines will be drawn, even deeper than before. So that does it for part 3. Part 4 is going to deal with the changing of the U.S. structure. And so I'll see you guys for that one in a second. Thanks.